Are you sure about that, sir? That does involve changing the bulb.
I think we're live. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I join you from for our last show of the year. I thought we'd go mood lighting. I thought, Happy New Year and all that sort of a thing, and or no power. The internet's going off at midnight. No booze allowed in the country anymore. Not even allowed to have in your car. If you're having a car, you'll be jailed. If you can't transport it, and if you're not wearing a mask now, it is a criminal offence, and you will be charged criminally. It's all good. It's all good.
There's only one person watching, and it's me.
Yes, yes, me. Look, I've turned on the main lighting now. So anyway, well, let's get on. Let's get on with it. It's going to be brief. It's going to be short. It's not working well. Remote ID is fantastic. Well done, the AUVSI and the AMA. They have done a fantastic job, and never let a wrong word be said against it.
And that's the end of today's stream, right?
I wouldn't go that far.
Sponsored by the FIA.
I think I don't know who wants to start on this first. I've got through about 300 of the 450, I think it is, pages of the document.
477.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot of it is fluffed out with reasoning behind what they've done. Every time there's something, then there's another page of why they've come to that conclusion, and it almost feels like they're trying to justify their position. Is what they're doing every time they've said something.
I love the way that they've said many respondents, blah, 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 when instead of saying the majority, but, they've tried to push up the low numbers and pull down the high numbers to make it sound like they had a lot of support for what they wanted to do, when in fact the reality was completely the opposite. It is such a spin job on those comments.
It is. You do read them and it's quite interesting. But, if we talk about the body of it, remote ID is coming. It's in legislation. We've lost Gary, so I'm assuming that means we're still live. We'll carry on.
Bonus points. We go to a new level now.
Points. It comes into force in 30 months, so people have 30 months to get compliant. For the most part, it falls into line with what we've seen in Europe, very much similar to the UK and Europe. The remote ID element now has a retrofit option, which wasn't even in there before. That wasn't even on the table. And they've also added some more realistic capabilities for the remote ID. For instance, network has completely been removed for now. As Bruce rightly said off air, it is for now. All aircraft manufactured will be required to comply. It looks to be a self-compliance as well, actually. Looking at the paperwork, all
self-certification.
To do is basically say, here's how our system works. And
that worked so well for Boeing, didn't it?
Yeah, but at least I think it's probably sensible in this element than, if we were going to get to the stage of having to have every single aircraft individually certified, like they were hinting at the first time, it would be a nightmare. It would just not happen. But the real interesting is remote ID for hobby flyers. It's going to be required, but you will be able to retrofit. And if I understand the documentation correct, you should be able to get away with one device for all of your aircraft. Now, initially, I didn't think you could, but they're keeping the element of the registration, which allows you to register more under the registration. And they go back in.
Well, Gary, you put a big loop in the system. Everything's
Am I here? I don't know. Can you hear me? Over.
I'm afraid so. We
just carried on without you, Gary.
Well, that's absolutely fine. And we've got more people watching now than we normally do. So you must be doing something right.
Okay. So what we've got is model aviation will have to register. Oh, I can hear myself.
Can you mute your thing, Gary? Can you mute your speaker because it's feeding back?
Hang on. Let's go like this. There we are. What a headset now. That's
right. Okay. That's better. I can't hear myself now. No one needs to hear that. Yeah, so model aviation, you will be required to have remote ID, but they are keeping the part of the law, which means you can register all of your aircraft under one registration, and that looks to be the same for remote ID. You should be able to list one serial number for the device against all your model aircraft. So it isn't terrible. It's not perfect. The FIRs or what have they? They've renamed them now as well, haven't they? It was
They're still
FIR.
Freers, aren't they?
Freers or something.
Freers.
Yeah, Freers
FIA.
still exist.
FIA.
So if you don't have remote ID, you will be required to fly in a Freer in 30 months. But if you're compliant with an external module, you will be able to carry on as normal for the most part.
Interesting though, is FPV allowed outside of a Freer? Because some of the document, what I was reading was that you had to, they've changed the ruling. So the pilot who's at the sticks must have visual line of sight. There's no mention of an observer in the recreational side of things.
No, there isn't, and that's something. There seems to be a bit of a gap there, and there is in the UK regulation as well, actually, and that's where Bruce had 2 very good videos this week, and that's where it gets all confusing, because even in the UK, there's literally no mention of FPV in Cap 722 for the most part, and then there's a second document which layers on top of it, which gives you permission. But again, you end up in this position. If we look at the UK regulations, there's almost 6 documents you need to look at to tell you where you need to be at with the flight. It's insanity. And in fact, the ANO in the UK today is wrong, because there's an amendment which comes into force in 4 days. Yet if you type in the air navigation order and go on the website, nowhere does it say today that there's an amendment document you should check first. And 4 or 5 elements of that ANO literally do not exist in 4 days' time. They're removing them. So it's a bit of a mess. But from the US point of view, I think, okay, network is gone. Remote ID is here. Model RC will be able to continue with remote ID and retrofit as possible. And that is pretty much where it's at. From a off-the-shelf product point of view, you will be buying a product with it in. I would expect DJI to put it, for instance, in all of their stuff, Autel, Skydio. The implementation for them is very simple. I'm not going to sit here and say all of your current aircraft are going to have it, because this doesn't have to come in for 30 months. So the reality is they're going to be in no rush to bring this to current models. I can see them perhaps doing it, but we'll have to see. We should remember that those aircraft are doing this already, just behind the scenes. So it is only a tweak to make it do it so everyone can see it. But the same issues are in it that were in the UK one. For instance, it is transmitting the pilot's location, or it has to transmit the takeoff location. So the same issues stand in the US as they do in the UK around privacy. And that remains to be a contentious point, especially for commercial operators whose business interests could be put at risk by people tracking. And the US hasn't done anything different to Europe in this aspect. It's very much the same situation.
Yeah, they've said it has to be able to be received by personal wireless devices, which generally means a smartphone. So that information, whether they layer it so that all that the public can see is your registration number, and then you've got some kind of encryption to protect all the other data. That's what I think they would have to do to preserve privacy. But what really annoys me is the way the FAA has spun this, and they've sort of played down the fact that, okay, you're all going to have remote ID because now you can fly over people and fly at night, but only if you have prop guards on your drone. Excuse me, it's like, so now the Mavic Mini 2 and the Mavic Mini are no longer sub 250, and because any craft that has to be registered now requires remote ID, it means you will not be able to, it actually makes things less safe, because say you've got a 249 gram Mavic Mini 2 now that you have registered and you use under Part 107, that's a very lightweight craft which produces very little risk to anybody. But if you register it, you've got to put remote ID on that thing, maybe as a separate thing, or maybe another craft you have to add remote ID. There's another 30 grams or so. Suddenly it's heavier. Plus you've got to put the prop guards on if you want to fly over people, which adds more weight. It's like, they say it's making things safer, but it's not, because nobody in their right mind flies over people anyway, regardless of what you're doing. This is a great thing, you can fly over people. No, that's not. Who thinks that's a safe thing to do? The FAA does, apparently, and we've been flying drones with prop guards for many years. I've got some. Hang on a minute. I've got one here. Look, just, we've had these things for ages. They're called Cine Whoops and Tiny Whoops, and we've been doing things safely. Now the FAA is saying, "Oh, don't worry, we've fixed the problem of danger flying over people. Just put these on." Well, we're already years ahead of them, and they're making claims that this is great and playing down the whole thing that now, no matter where you are, unless you're at a freer, you're going to have this remote ID. And there's so much confusion, especially within the manned aviation community. I've had a lot of people saying on comments on my videos, "Oh, I'm a pilot and I'm really happy now because I want to know where these drones are," but it's not electronic conspicuity, it's remote ID. You won't know where the drone is until you're already several hundred bloody yards past it, because the range of this thing is Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It's only going to be a few hundred yards at best. So if you're traveling in a manned aircraft at a normal speed, by the time you pick it up, you've passed it. So it's not going to do anything to promote safety in terms of keeping manned aviation and unmanned aviation apart. And they still keep saying this is to help integrate drones into the national airspace. And I still say, get the pedestrians off the freeway.
Absolutely. LinkedIn users, I don't know if you can hear me, but LinkedIn users say you don't need propeller guards in all cases. You need to be able to prevent laceration. The in-flight termination system could do it.
Rubber propellers
can't do that if the propellers are spinning.
Exactly. You can't guarantee that the motors are going to be disarmed. And they talk particularly, I think there's some relevant documentation or adjunct, supplementary documentation talks about propeller guards, and they're talking about typical America. They're talking about energy levels in foot-pounds. Really? The rest of the world works in joules. Do you not understand the metric system? Foot-pounds. Goodness me. And they say 12 foot-pounds. Well, actually, coincidentally, that is the maximum energy allowed in the UK without a license for an air rifle. Would you think that being shot with an air rifle is relatively harmless? I don't think so.
Oh, God, he's gone there.
How's it, Louis?
Hey, Louis. It's overall, to be fair, I think if we look at it, it's interesting how all of the countries have almost landed at exactly the same spot. They really have.
Conspiracy.
It's very much the Europe and UK regulations. If anything, now the US regulation is slightly less restrictive than Europe, although it isn't, because you have to have remote ID. There is provision in the UK to fly without remote ID under A3, which isn't in the American system. But for the most part, if we look at where it was insanity. Where it's landed is, I'm not going to call it reasonable. I think it's wrong to call it reasonable, but I think it's landed around the area I was expecting it to come. What I found interesting this week was the amount of people kicking off. And you're sort of going, guys, this has been a year in the oven. This cake is well cooked. She's been rising, and it's finally come out. And, people are going, oh my God, and it's like, this is done and dusted. But look, there's a lot of time here, 30 months. It's a long time.
Come on, guys. We all know, and if you've been on the social media destinations, you've seen the amount of people that are asking, why does not my DJI Mini 2 take off? I live nearby the airport. It should take off. Come on, it's crazy. The regulations are here for a purpose.
Actually, Louis, while you say that, my response is, yes, okay, then it's supposed to be safety, security. Show me the risk assessment, independently peer-reviewed risk assessment, and I will comply with your regulations. Until you can show me the evidence, the data to back up what you're claiming, I do not believe you.
Oh, come on, Bruce, you're not a good example for anyone. You're just a bad example for everybody. Because
the whole industry.
No, come on. They have to do something, and this is better. At least we have a almost uniform regulation around the world, so what you
uniformly
there
bad.
Are no doubts about what we have. It's clear. We like it? No, we don't like it. Most of us that are working with drones think it will be a royal pain in the backside to comply with some of these issues, but it's there. If you want to go crazy with regulations, come on, I'll show you a few countries in the world that you'll go absolutely bananas. more than what you have now. But
but there's some that have done it right. I mean, why can't people sub 250 copy Canada? There's been nothing caused by the regulations work perfectly fine in Canada. No prescriptive rules, no registration. Just don't be a dickhead. That's worked so well. Why not copy that? It is no burden on the drone user. It's no burden on the regulator, and it's working. Why would you not learn from that and say, let's do that? Canada reviewed that with a view to looking at whether it still should be in place, and they kept it because it's working so damn well. Yet in the UK, you've got a camera on that wall. You're going to have to register that, and in America, you've got a camera on it. Well,
are you sure that Canada will not change their rules to become similar to these ones from the EASA and US ones? I'm not so sure about that, because it's the power of copy. You just copy and paste it all around the world. And I don't like the rules. I would like to be on my own. I'm a responsible user. But there must be some kind of regulations.
Yeah, of course.
Come on.
There must be regulation. It must be proportional to risk. Must be proportional to risk. We don't have any proportionality.
No, you're putting the risk on the wrong side of the fence. The risk is the users. The amount of people that are saying, "Oh, I cannot take off with my DJI and I live nearby the airport," or "I cannot take and it only goes 1 kilometer." Come on, it's all stupid. So the rules are here to protect us,
hang on a minute,
responsible users from stupid, off-the-shelf drone users.
You can't fly near an airport. The rules already say don't fly near airports, and people fly near airports. Rules do not stop people from doing bad things. All they do is inconvenience people who follow the rules.
Come on, they hardly know how to read, much less how to write. You look at the forums on Facebook, and those guys can't even spell. Come on, are we going nuts? So it has to be there. And the thing that I fear the most is that the rules won't be enforced. If they are not enforced, they are not applicable. So we'll end up falling on the same stupid swamp of that we have good rules or bad rules, but we have rules, but they are not enforced.
It's actually funny because Louis said something that actually makes a point, and Bruce, you've both said something that actually leads into this, which is, people aren't following the rules because they're flying near airports anyway, and that is where remote ID will come in and help the situation, because it will give some visibility to what is happening, and hopefully some of these guys can be not dealt with. Dealt with isn't the right term out and out, but maybe educated to show where they're going wrong. Because Louis' point is people are trying to do stuff they shouldn't be doing. Bruce's point is they're doing it anyway. Where remote ID fits into this is going to give people visibility of that more than they've had before. And it isn't perfect. None of us particularly like it, but at the end of the day, the industry will continue with a very small adaptation. Yes, there's cost. There's no question about that. It's going to cost a bit of money, but it isn't going to be terrible. I already know a number of open source companies. These modules are going to be everywhere. Everyone is going to be knocking them out. I'm guessing $30, $40 will be the top end of the scale on these things once they hit the market.
Look at the French project. It's about the same as the French project, just perhaps a little change on the firmware side, and it's there, and you can do it with an Arduino. Come on. Bruce, you're being a sour grape on all of this.
No.
I
can feel my buttocks being slowly prized apart 1 inch at a time, and it's just the thin end of this wedge that goes in there. The thing is, they told us that registration would solve these problems of people flying near airports. They told us registration would make the airspace safe, and it hasn't done a damn thing. And because they didn't base it on a risk assessment, now they're telling us remote ID will do this. There's no risk assessment to back it up.
You're on the place that has special camps for infected COVID guys. So this is just a minor detail around this.
It's funny. It's funny. I ended up defending Bruce this week on Facebook because of some controversial videos that he put out, and my defense of Bruce was that, look, when we give an inch on bad regulation, it sets them up to take a mile, and I think that's always where Bruce is heading with this. Is once you start down the road of bad regulation, the next thing they've steamrolled you because you've said nothing about the last 4 or 5 things. I think everyone's said their bit. I'm not going to say they've listened. There's a lot of comments in that paperwork, and I think they've picked and choose what makes them look good, and it makes them sound like they're a lovely little regulator that's listening to everyone. The reality is, I think they've chosen an option which is all they can do right now. Networks have to be the networks. There was people posting not 2 weeks ago how they're going to be involved, and suddenly it's all out of the window overnight.
And the really telling thing was they made mention of basically when the skies are filled with drones delivering stuff, it is to clear the space for these drones that are going to be they believe are going to be doing all deliveries. It is to clear the airspace for commercial activity. They gave it away in a phrase in the executive summary, I think it was, which basically spilled the beans and said, yeah, we're doing this because we want lots of people using drones in the airspace and you guys are in the way. It's like, excuse me, you've just let it go,
Gary's trying to say something where we should let him talk. It's his show.
No. Well, the thing I want to say is you're exactly right about people saying it's clearing the airspace for professional users, and it's been driving me balmy, this phrase professional users, because I don't think I could count on the fingers professional users that have impressed me, but there are hundreds and thousands of hobby and FPV pilots that impress me and have a much better safety record, a much better handle on what's going on, their heads in the game, and this flipping professional term that I've been reading all day today. It's like, they ain't professionals just because they got a Part 107. Come on. Anyway, I'll start. Look, you see the lights come back on, so I'll start switching everything off here. You keep talking.
But they've not. It's the interesting thing in this is no one's got really what they wanted. None of Amazon. All this talk of UTM has all gone out the window for now. Whether it was too big a barrier, it at the end of the day, it is what it is. I think there's been a lot of hearsay, a lot of nonsense. The documentation is long-winded, that's for sure. But here and now, it is more restrictive than the UK and Europe, but it isn't terrible, and it will continue. And I think non-compliance is going to be a massive element of this. You're watching on the forums, people are already saying, well, I'm not going to comply. So it's going to be interesting to see how the US handles it, and all of it, because we're all falling into this pool of remote ID around the same time across the world. All of the countries, it's all that kicked into the long grass 2 to 3 years.
The only strategy the hobby has got now is non-compliance. It's worked for prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. It worked for dope. And the silly thing is that you can go and buy marijuana in many states in America without even revealing your ID, without being tracked or monitored. And it previously was an illegal substance. Now we've got a hobby that used to be completely legal, and you've got to be fitting remote ID to your evil little model aircraft and drones. How the world is tipped upside down.
What is your hobby, Bruce? Sorry. What is your hobby? Your hobby is driving a car down the road and feeling a need to pee and stop anywhere and pee on the side of the roads? Is that your hobby? Come on, Bruce.
What?
No, come on. The thing is, what is your hobby? Is your hobby the going on somewhere and take out a drone, be it a 250 grams or a kilo drone, and a nice site. Let me get my drone up. Is that your hobby?
No. But I don't think it's too much to ask that people can fly their little toys in their own backyard without having to have a remote ID transmitter on it, when it's no one's business but their own. If they're flying in their own yard, below the level of the trees. But in America, if you want to fly your drone in your own yard, you have to have remote ID on it. How crazy is that?
Above 249 grams, so Bruce, below 249 grams, as long as you're not 107, you won't be required to comply.
Yeah, but if you like, why should there be a weight limit? If I'm flying a 1 kilo drone in my backyard, it's just as safe as if I'm flying a 250 gram drone in my backyard. As long as I stay in my backyard, it's not an issue. If I'm flying on my friend's farm, where we are, he might have a 100-acre farm, and I'm flying in the middle of it with his permission, and I'm flying below 400 feet. Why do I need remote ID? Because there will be nobody there to pick it up. It's only going to go a few hundred yards. Anyone outside the boundary of the property won't be able to pick it up anyway. So why do I need remote ID? There are so many unreasonable restrictions. Yes, I get the concept, and there are valid reasons for stopping people from, or identifying people that might be flying near airports and things, but it is just a blunt weapon, and they're going to get non-compliance, huge levels of non-compliance, and therefore it's going to encourage people to be in violation of the good regulations if you hung for a sheep as a lamb. So it's going to be counterproductive safety-wise, and I hate the fact it's being sold fraudulently as protecting privacy and security and all those things that it's not.
Sorry, Mark, I was going to go.
Here's where I find it completely crazy. Okay, in America, right, you can own just about any weapon under the sun. Okay,
Not on every state. Not on every state.
You can have that. Okay, right. You can have something that will do mass harm, right? Regardless, don't you? People. I know Americans love their gun laws, and I'm not. That's up to them. In the UK, you can own a shotgun. However, right, you could be a registered keeper, so you'll pay for your shotgun license or whatever. But if you take that shotgun out and you go shooting, right, no one tracks you where you go with that thing. You can take a 12-ball shotgun and you can go out into the countryside in the UK and you can shoot things, right? Be it clay pigeons or go on a shoot or whatever. That can kill someone, but you're not required to be tracked where you are with that gun when it leaves its metal cabinet locked away.
More importantly, they have killed people. Recreational multi-rate drones have never killed anybody.
No, that's not strictly true. There's been at least 3.
Okay.
When recreational multi-rotor drones? Explain.
Sorry, we're talking about recreational aircraft have it in the UK.
No. Recreational multi-rotor drones are very, very specific.
Okay. Not drones specifically, as far as I'm aware, no.
No, that's right. That's why I always make that point, is the recreational use of multi-rotor drones has never killed anybody in the entire history of the planet. But they're the reason that the rules affecting model aircraft and everything have been changed. But as I say, all I want, I don't think it's too much to ask. If you're going to make such a huge imposition on my freedoms and my rights, just provide me with the evidence to back up your claims, and they can't do it. So those claims are invalid.
Here's an interest. Okay, so let's just say, Bruce, then, that this comes in. There's mass non-compliance, but for those who do comply, it stops one aircraft hitting a manned aviation aircraft outside an airport because someone didn't know the rules. At the end of the day, that's a good thing. Even with mass non-compliance, there is still, in the ready-to-fly end of this alone, huge benefits for education, for people flying where they shouldn't be. We all agree people shouldn't fly next to airports, yet we know daily people do it. Just look at Gatwick. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. No, but look, we know people are doing silly things. If you look at Gatwick, something that was a fact, which I think there was 3 or 4 aircraft found up against the fence into the ground around the airport when they were patrolling as part of it. Now, whether that's fabricated or not, it poses some interesting questions of what people are doing. But is it really a bad thing if there is mass non-compliance, but it still comes in and it helps to educate people? Because that
the problem is, though, but the problem is that it's not even an educative thing. Someone can still fly their drone with remote ID in the flight path of an airliner and bring down an airliner. All it does, it enables people to apportion blame afterwards. It doesn't stop anything bad from happening. And that's the thing. It's just about, it's like this flying over people. You couldn't fly over people before, but you will be able to now, because if you do hurt somebody, we'll know who you are because of the remote ID on your drone. So we're not trying to stop bad things. We're just trying to find people and punish people when bad things happen. And the problem that arises from the scenario you thing where there's mass non-compliance is that when they don't have the resources to guarantee compliance, they will make scapegoats out of people. They will pick people and they will throw the book at them, which is resoundingly unfair on those people because they're no different to all the others. But that's the only way that authorities can manage the situation, is to just really, really be unreasonably harsh on people that don't deserve it. And so you get injustices occurring. And the thing is that I say, honestly, the risk, we've seen the BBC and other people fabricating the risk by weaponized, turning drones into cannonballs and shooting them at lightweight aircraft parts. And we were told that if a drone hits a helicopter, the helicopter will crash, people will die. We've now had 4 well-documented instances where drones have hit helicopters, sometimes large ones. A Matrice hit a Hughes 500 in the Baja and hit the tail rotor, and it landed safely. No one was hurt. We've had other helicopter incidents. The RCMP flew into an Airbus helicopter, and nobody was hurt. All the claims they're making have not been substantiated by the facts. When they're put to the test, hey, helicopters aren't falling out of the sky and crashing in a burning heap when they hit a drone. So all I'm saying is, if you believe what you say is true regarding the risk, then it should be simple to produce the risk assessment you can produce with independent peer review to justify what you're doing. If you cannot justify what you're doing, then I'm asking, why not? Is it because the risk assessment would betray the lies you're giving us? Or is it that for some other reason?
Bruce,
and I think, what?
When are you going to stop to ask for risk assessments? Have you asked lately for a risk assessment on the speed limits on cars?
No, because we can see that evidence every day.
No, it's the same thing. Have you asked when you see a sign that says 30, and I can tell you that in some countries you go at 32 and you get fined, but when you say 30 sign, do you respect those 30?
Yeah, because when I look, we see people dying on the roads. There is definitely, we've seen it. We've seen the bodies. Show me the bodies associated with recreational multi-rotor drone use. There are no bodies.
It's the same thing. if you start asking for risk assessment for drones, you better get your act together and ask for everything that has rules and regulations.
But hang on, Louis. When you go to if you file for some kind of special permission, you have to provide a risk assessment. Part of commercial operation is doing a risk assessment before you fly. So if it's good enough for us to have to do risk assessments, why can't the regulator not?
I have SORA documents all over the world. I know the royal pain that is to have those risk assessments.
Gary's had to get out a paraffin lamp.
But the thing is, you cannot start asking constantly.
Why not?
No. You can, but
give me a reason.
No. Then when you start on that route, you better start going and ask for the risk assessments on anything.
Why not? All good regulations are based on identifying risks and the magnitude of those risks. What's enshrined in the law in the US?
Oh my God.
Okay, Bruce, do you agree at all with remote ID in any form then? Let me just go down this.
I do. I agree with remote ID in store-bought craft, consumer-grade drones. That's fine, because those are the problem area. That's where people go and buy the drone, no idea what they're doing. But it should not apply to model aircraft, and it should not apply to things like drones that people have built themselves unless they sell them. If you're building something for your own use, you've got the skills, the knowledge, the understanding.
Bruce, are those model aircrafts being used outside the designated areas?
Yeah, they've been used in parks and school grounds all over the world.
No. Approved flying fields. We had here for years and years, and you would get jail if you were caught flying an helicopter outside or a plane outside those flying fields.
You look on YouTube, you'll see people all over the world flying their model aircraft in schoolyards and in parks. Just because your country's a bit backward doesn't make it the right thing. Because when I was a kid, we flew in schoolyards and parks, and that's the way the hobby should be, because these are low risk things. But I say remote ID is to catch the stupid people, the ones you talk about flying off the airport, that's fine. But someone like me who's been flying for 60 years, what the hell do I need remote ID for? I'm not going to do anything.
You agree with the UK regulations, because the UK regs, as they stand today, are remote ID for everything that is in a class system, which is off the shelf. Model aviation can continue to fly with no restriction without remote ID, not in congested areas, basically with the same permissions they have today. And that's never changed.
As long as you're a member of a model flying organization, or is that? No, that's okay. So you can fly in your local park or school ground.
Yeah, any way they want. Yeah. The only thing that the model aviation clubs gives them is some height permissions, additional stuff above.
And what about registration? What's the point of registering though over 250 grams?
That's a different argument. We're talking about remote ID.
No, but we were told registration was to make everything safer. And that's what we're told remote ID is supposed to do.
Don't change the topic. Ian was pulling out your leg on that one. No, don't change the topic.
Oh, sorry. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
Hey, how's it going? I'm going for winner of the Karl Marx lookalike contest. I figure a couple more months I'll be able to run for governor here in California. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, I agree with Bruce that, I mean, if you want me to follow a law, it's got to make some sense. Where's the data? He is correct about the registration. I'm also president of the Bruce fan club. No, he is correct. Registration was supposed to educate. It was supposed to build a culture of compliance and accountability. That's what the Secretary of Transportation and Administrator Huerta said here in the United States, and we got our 250 grams, which was totally arbitrary. So I've been pretty vocal fighting this one. The other thing you have to look is the Benedict Arnolds here in the United States who advocated for the repeal of Section 336 because the, hobbyist had to come to heel or, the sky was going to fall. The data does not back up the assertions. So, AOPA fought ADSB for, 20 years. We don't need it. We still don't have ADSB in all airspace. We have people that steal aircraft, crash them, fly them around, do whatever they want to do. And you're talking about a 250-gram drone? I knew this was going to come back to bite us. I told Drone Flaws that when they gave consensus, they threw the AMA under the bus. What we are getting today is it's just a clamp down. So some of these, Lance service providers and other app service providers can charge us fees for using their app to get into airspace. We had a process that worked. You call the tower if you wanted to fly within 3 miles of the airport. The FAA created a problem. Now we can't fly within 5 miles of an airport. I mean, it just goes on and on. So you're talking about a loss of freedom for, everybody in this hangout probably was an RC flyer and got to experience the magic of building and flying their own model. The Chinese came in here, and as far as I'm concerned, have destroyed the model industry. And basically any yahoo with a credit card can go out and now is an aviator if they want to spend.
I think I'm going to have to defend the Chinese drone industry a little bit there. That's a little bit unfair. I think if you want to point a finger, okay, so we have our foolish element of flyers, but I would say it's the counter UAS industry, and it's the industry standing up to try and make that buck for every flight. They've seen a gap and they're running with it.
No, I agree. I agree that all you have to
wrong.
do is you look at who advocated for the repeal of Section 336, AirMap, Kitty Hawk, Small UAV Coalition, AUVSI. It's like, don't you have student competitions? Don't you understand what's at stake? I mean, does everybody just want their kids to sit on some couch somewhere and play video games, or do they want them to go outside and get some vitamin D? I think it's bad for innovation. I noticed in the comments of what the FAA said is they didn't think it would stifle innovation. But my whole point is you're going to be stifling innovation. You've been stifling innovation domestically for years. And, anybody who, I'm over here in the United States and we got the whole rah-rah thing. Oh, we're going to have all these American drones compete with the Chinese. I don't know what you're smoking some of that recreational weed Bruce was talking about. This is not going to happen.
Well, if it was going to happen, it would be there now. It would be happening now. You would be able to buy, and I'm not meaning this to mean any offense to you, Patrick, but you'd be able to make an American-made drone would be sat in a Best Buy equivalent anywhere else in the world, whatever that is, and it would be similar to what DJI are offering, but of course it's never going to get there because of ITAR. It's never going to get there unless there's a.
Not even the ITAR. We got rules in this country, environmental rules, and we have labor. You can't work people 6 or 7 days a week, 15, 16 hours a day, man. It's just not happening. And then we have IP protection and all the rest of that. So there's a myriad of reasons. But you're right, Gary, because if I'm going to manufacture something here in the United States, I can't sell it anywhere. Or everything you manufacture in China, you can sell it everywhere. I mean, they're doing it now with military drones, and nobody's talking about it.
And who's the RAF and the UK forces talking about buying drones from today because it's cheaper than American-made drones, that don't come with the ITAR patches. What was it? That was the Global Hawk, wasn't it? That they upgraded it, and then they refused to give Europe the upgrades under ITAR. But they're talking about buying from Turkey now. UK military is going, well, we can buy 10 of these for the price of one of those. Let's buy them from Turkey.
But this has been the thing with model aircraft and drones and unmanned aircraft, whatever you want to call them, RPVs, whatever. Is you don't have to be a highly developed country to develop your own unmanned aircraft. It's all globally sourced. You put it together, and you can make your own or cobble something together and go out and fly it. So it's very hard to control that. I think that now, and you remember I wrote that story, "Don't Wing Loan Me, Bro." It was kind of tongue in cheek, but I mean, you can buy a Predator or Reaper, equivalent for a quarter of the price and go fly it around. And then everyone here is like, oh, that'll never work. Well, that's what they said about the commercial drones, and they do work. I agree with Bruce again on the RID thing. It doesn't prohibit anybody from doing anything. We all know that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi can be spoofed or hacked. So, I'm just waiting, like you were saying on the boards there, there'll be, here's your spoofy, hacky remote ID. The other thing you have is DJI ran in there and sold them a false bill of goods on that aeroscope and told them, oh, we already have remote ID, and I reposted that article today, Aero Not So Much, in the Albuquerque balloon fiesta fiasco. There were like 1,000. Don't even come here. Because we're going to be, and if and nothing, they saw 1,000 drones, and then you ask them, well, what's a detection? Well, it's kind of squishy. Could have been a sensor picking up the same drone. Some guy could have been in his garage and fired it up and updated his software. Yada yada yada. It just goes on and on.
Patrick, Aeroscope was better for actual commercial operators in many ways because it wasn't public data. One of the big issues with remote ID is the amount of data that's going to be publicly available to people to actually use and see where people are operating. The interesting thing with Aeroscope is, yes, it was DJI's own implementation behind closed doors. Yes, I know people could hack it, but for the most part, it was behind closed doors, which gave people some anonymity, and that in many ways is a good thing for commercial operators and not a bad thing.
Yeah, but even the contingency plan, I think I mentioned this last week or the week before, whatever. With the prison system here in California, you get the Folsom Prison Blues. What do? You call the sheriff. Think we have a drone out here. I mean, okay, but it's going to take them 45 minutes to get out there. You're already, the drone's back in the trunk and you're gone. And, are they going to have RID on that to make sure they're compliant? They don't want to get in trouble with the FAA.
Do we think governments are going to set up radio networks now then? You think across the world, we've got this open network and, we've talked about this.
We will.
Yeah, but do you think governments are going to? Because if I phone the police today, they'll turn up in about an hour and a half in 4 days' time. To it's not going to be today, so there's going to be a very real where's the rewind button so we can see what happened. So I do wonder what will go on behind closed doors on this.
Well, I'm sure they'll keep data. I mean, that was another thing about the why AOPA was fighting the ADSB thing, is they didn't want all of that data logged, so you could go back and, is this guy a bad apple? Is he just an idiot, repeat offender or whatever? And then we could go back and build a case and, because we're too lazy to leave the FSDO, or we don't have the money to leave the FSDO. We're not going to look at any books. Yeah, and I'm going to go back to what Bruce said. So, if you already have things kind of in place and a process and all the rest of that, and you don't use them, it's just more busy work and more money and less freedom for the rest of us. There are ways to do this, and people don't want to do it. or don't understand it. I also posted a graphic from the Department of Homeland Security, and if you look at the drone, oh, this is a suspicious drone. It has tape on it. Oh, look, there's wires. Holy mackerel!
Dreadful.
I saw that image. That image was horrendous.
It's dreadful. It's dreadful. It reminds me very much of Hands Up. All those remember the chap that they set up with the Phantom and the C4. They sold him an RC Phantom. They sold him some C4, and they told him how to use the RC. And they set him up outside. Where was it? In Washington, wasn't it? I can't remember. Wasn't it in DC? But they set a guy up and then arrested him. And the FBI had paid for all the bits and rolled him up and got him there. So that graphic very much reminded me of that. And while I've just quickly got the microphone, because I know my internet is going in 21 minutes, it's been a long day here. What about the fact that for retrofitting, that the aircraft should not be able to fly unless its remote ID is working?
Doesn't require it for retrofit. Already checked. It's not a part of that specific element. They specifically address that element, and there was one other. So,
well, even the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi thing. You know, when I fly in San Francisco, there's so much Wi-Fi interference. When you're using the Parrot under Wi-Fi control, you got dropout in 10 feet. You know, I mean. So, you know, are you going to have to land because there's too much Wi-Fi interference, all the rest of that stuff? How are we going to know for sure that it's what's going on? Somebody's
looking at the paperwork from what they were saying for retrofit, it was very much you turn it on and that's it. They weren't really doing much checks. For the ready to fly, absolutely, it must self-check. It must check it's working. It must not work to allow takeoff.
There's other stuff too that's interesting, because it says it must not interfere with the drone's operation, and the drone must not interfere with the remote ID's operation. But you take, for example, a small freestyle racing drone. There's a thing called Betaflight Rescue, where you put a GPS receiver on your drone, and if you get too far away, you can flick a switch and it returns home, you know, that sort of thing. But most people have a great deal of difficulty getting it going because there's so much electronics in such a small space. The GPS receiver cannot get a signal. It's too much noise. So how are these add-on remote ID things going to work on a craft where the craft itself generates too much noise for the GPS to get a lock, and you've got to have GPS to send that data back, or where the transmission of a Wi-Fi signal or a Bluetooth signal screaming in the ear of a sensitive 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz receiver effectively reduces your range to near zero. I made the mistake once of taking off with a RunCam camera that has Wi-Fi, recording camera. I left the Wi-Fi on. I got about maybe 70 or 80 meters before the drone failed safe and fell to the ground because the Wi-Fi signal overwhelmed the receiver at that distance. If you're going to have this running on Wi-Fi frequencies, and most drones are controlled by Wi-Fi signals, whether it's from a cheap consumer drone or from someone with like a Free Sky radio, you are going to have the remote ID interfering with the drone operation. Therefore, by definition, you can't use it. And therefore, so the fact that we have these add-on modules doesn't mean you'll still be able to fly your legacy craft, because it may not work.
Or the modules
what
will
you're
not
saying is old technology. Nobody tells you that the technology does not evolve. Current boards are some of the cheaper ones are very noisy. Yes, I've been doing testing on all of that, but the good boards, the well-built boards, are not noisy on RF. So it's a problem for technology to solve, and I don't see a problem there. If you want to fly, come on, you still fly at 35 megahertz or 72 megahertz?
It's not going to wipe out. Yeah, it's not going to wipe out R6. It's no different. You know, DJI have got a 40 megs OFDM video carrier smashing through the middle of the band, and the RC still behaves. I think for anything, actually, Bruce's point is the other way. Your aircraft could really do some damage to the remote ID carrier. And the interesting thing, I haven't looked at the ASTM standard, but there has to be some form of LBT in it, because it's going to have to pick a channel, isn't it? It's going to have to pick something which is open air before it can transmit.
And that's going to be interesting, because some of the new protocols like Tracer and Ghost, they previously, like the normal FreeSky protocols, there's a very low duty cycle for the RF transmission. So you can listen before you talk and so forth, and you'll find a gap in that. But with some of the newer protocols, which gives us super low latency, they're using such high data rates that there is a continuous transmission virtually. There are no gaps. So if your remote ID has to listen before transmit, it will never transmit because the onboard receiver sending stuff around, or your transmitter, is not going to leave any gaps in the spectrum for it to transmit.
So here's a question then, guys. This remote ID, right? You go, you do your flight, you come back, you land. Now a copper's seen your operator ID, comes up to you and wants to know a bit more. But in the meantime, you've got your device and you've turned it off. Does the device have to store any data? Once you turn it off, it's dead. So therefore, it can't be used to prove what you've done.
Yeah, wow. But their handheld device will be recording it, and everything's everything's timestamped, so it'll have all that data with a timestamp.
Will it?
Yeah, there's no requirement for the remote ID device to store anything, as far as I've seen.
And if you connect your iPad to see it, does that mean once you come off it, it's gone? Because this is meant to show it. It doesn't mean record it, as far as I can tell. It's only meant to display what it's transmitting live at the point in time. It doesn't mean it stores it to rewind it to play it again.
But it must be a recording option, because why else would you timestamp it? Because if it's just real time, you don't need a timestamp.
You see, for electronic conspicuousy, I'd agree with you. But this isn't. This is remote ID. This is different.
Well, my beef, when we go along with this is like, if we look at the registration, what did we give up with 250 grams? Arbitrary number. It was consensus upon because it was supposed to put this problem to bed, and it did not. And I feel like we gave up our freedoms for a not so well thought out plan. And I kind of feel the same way here. And so, one of my old saws, being at this for about 20 years, the integration thing is we've gone from not being regulated to oppressive regulation. And I don't know how it is for general aviation in your respective countries, but here in the United States, it is dying. And why is it dying? It's dying because instead of, too much regulation. The aircraft are too expensive. To get into being a pilot now is $10,000, and then if you want to be a part owner in a plane and the maintenance and everything else, you have to be rich. And unfortunately, that's where I'm thinking this is going. This is going to be another one of those things where it's overregulated and you have to have tons of money. Even to go out and fly a glider, at 399 feet.
That's like owning a boat. It's like in the UK, owning a boat is like owning a second house. Anything you want to buy and add the word boat to it, there's like a 400 quid premium. If it was a fiver, it's 405 quid. It is an interesting point. I think there's definitely a money grab. That's for sure. And that's across the globe. I think there's, whether it be governments, whether it be someone, that they want a slice of this magical future pie that really isn't what they think.
$1 billion pie. Well,
that's exactly what it is, isn't it? And it's in every one of these junctures. It's like, this will open the skies, and we'll all make a boatload of money.
There's a problem with that in the UK because our aviation service is different to a lot of others, right? So ours is only allowed to make a 5% profit. The CAA can only make a 5% profit.
But it's not the regulators. It's not the regulators that are out there paying for the money. It's various companies. That
and there's a reason why NATS is part privately funded.
Yeah,
and it's a very good way they get around that.
Just a quick question: when you go on a highway, do you pay tolls?
No,
you don't. But you don't have highways in New Zealand. You just go on from Hobbit Cave to Hobbit Cave. But
exactly.
Yeah. We don't have COVID either.
Hobbit UAM,
but
Hobbit,
the thing
Hobbit
is,
Air Mobility, HAM.
We have to pay tolls on highways if we want to ride on a highway. Yes, you do. Or you pay road tax. That's about the same. You pay once for all.
So but Louis, what maintenance does the Portuguese Civil Aviation Authority do on the sky? What do they go and sweep the clouds up, and do they go
they
stop
can
the rain?
they can
Or
put all the systems that coordinate and maintain the free sky for all. So they can make traffic lanes for under 400 feet. They can do a lot of things with the money of those.
So they're collecting money to build a mechanism to help them collect money.
Yeah.
That seems like a complete waste of time.
No.
Why not just not collect the money? You don't need the mechanism.
No, come on, Bruce. You just
That's not how it works in the United States. The government's got to lose money on everything, and they're not happy.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you pay, look at the telecom.
Kind of a constant. I don't know. I think we're giving, if we had comprehensive advocacy, we wouldn't be we'd fight this stuff tooth and nail. I'm really disappointed. This reservation, or I don't know how it is in your respective countries again, but open land here, especially like in California, outrageously expensive. So like if I wanted to go start a new club here somewhere, I'd have to be a millionaire to say, oh, okay, well, let's go out and buy 10 acres that has a road and power and, all the rest. That'd be a lot of money. And again, I think that's a barrier. And as Bruce said, I used to fly in my backyard. I'm 3.3 miles from an airport. I could fly in my backyard. Now I got to get a, authorization to fly, and then I'm going to have RID to fly in my backyard to look for mistletoe in the tree. I mean, it's pathetic. I really believe it's pathetic. And I think that the FAA, my estimation, the UASIO has too much money and too much time on their hands. And they should be looking at some of the other issues. I went back and looked at the data of the incidents, before 107 kicked off. And I don't even know why they're letting these global hawks fly. There's incident after incident after incident after incident. And, equipment failures and, close calls, and you got predators crashing in people's yards, and they let them fly. Well, why do they let them fly? Because they have lobbyists. That's another story I posted today. I don't know if you saw that, but I mean, DJI brought in the big guns, and, they got themselves off of the NDAA. They've got to use their process for this remote ID. Too much control. It's another one of those things. You're never going to have a domestic drone company be able to, catch up and compete with the DJI without, $1 billion worth of investment. And that's just not happening here.
But then again, look, if we take, to be fair on them, this standard that the US has chosen is exactly the same standard that close to every country in the world has adopted, which is the ASTM standard. DJI might have advocated for it, but you can't say it's their fault everyone is going this way.
Don't get Bruce started. Don't get Patrick started on this. We know about this.
And that's not
we were there
either, because the economic impact report was that the FAA did on it was based on what the information that DJI gave them that was already happening. So I don't know that that's totally true. We have to, even the ASTM process, so the ASTM has a standard. Has it been adopted by any CAA around the world? Or is it just like, oh, well, we're going to, wink, wink, nod, nod, and we're going with this? That ASTM thing is a racket. I was there, kickoff F-38, and it is one of the biggest and, family show bullshit stories I've seen. Then you have that RTCA joke where they got the guy who's a consultant who's running over there to Europe to make sure that, the Europeans love the RTCA crap. This is a rigged game. We're the citizens. They're the government. You're supposed to be listening to us. I mean, there's probably more SMEs on this hangout than there are in many of these committees that are making rules for people that they know nothing about. Even these guys, I'm an RC hobby enthusiast. I'm an RCer. These guys fly the stuff, you go buy the box for $200 and you pull out the little plane that's this big. We've got to do something about these rogue flyers. You're not an RC hobbyist. You're some guy with a credit card, man. It really chills my eye that we don't have anybody to stand up and say, no more bullshit. Show me the data.
No, come on, Patrick. It's all a matter of lobby.
It's that simple.
And the thing is, except for DJI, do you see any other small?
Don't let me continue, please.
No,
Someone
no.
else.
No.
Bruce.
Except for DJI, do you see any other company that can help the Bruces of this world that want to fly their FPV 250 gram or 260 grams drones? Or does the model aviation community have enough power to ask directly to their representatives in Parliament or Congress to vote for a different ruling? There is no power because it's we are all a scattered bunch of guys that have a hobby and are trying to defend that hobby. And the rules come, and the guys that manage the money and trying to make money out of this are the guys that are going to survive on this. So either we take it as it is, or we try to change it for the best with the current regulations. If they are bad, let's try to improve in a responsible way, not just throw them away. Not just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
We don't have any power. We don't have the unified voice. We don't have the weight of numbers. All we can do is follow the lead set by the prohibition of alcohol and marijuana and just ignore the laws until such point as they realize nobody's following our rules. Our rules are pointless. We might as well change them for the better. We might as well legalize the stuff that people are doing now because nobody's dying and our rules are not being obeyed, so the rules are pointless. That's how we got alcohol back. That's how we've got the legalization or the decriminalization of marijuana in just about every country on the planet now. It's the only way you can fight this.
Bruce, people ignore speed limits every single day. Government is taking.
But people are dying on the roads. People are not dying because of recreational multi-rose drones. There's a big difference. Show me the bodies. That's my catchline. Show me the bodies. Show me the bodies. I'll change my mind. But I don't see
ignoring the rules doesn't make governments change.
On my street, the speed limit is 30. Nobody complies with the 30.
He's right.
Nobody outside there.
And, here in California, everybody smoked pot, and it pretty much they wanted to get in on the action. But what happens with the government, even here in California, the black market weed, nobody buy the black market weed's cheaper. It's better if you want organic. I don't smoke, but from what I hear. And, you got to jump through these arbitrary hoops. I know it probably sounds like I do, but I don't. Jump through arbitrary hoops to go to some dispensary to buy some, weed that when they test it has pesticides and whatnot in it. So, again here, I don't know how it's going in your respective countries. I would say in the United States, the laws are not being enforced across the board. There's issues there.
Did they tax weed over there, Patrick? Did they tax it?
Oh, yeah, they tax it and they got greedy. And now the Mexican government, they're like, this is going to be NAFTA all over again, where the Mexican government legalized it. And they're like, oh, great, we're going to, have the world's largest weed market. And I'm sure it'll be coming right across the border. So that's, an issue with when you try and clamp down on these things. Now, everybody talks about this as being a digital license plate. Same deal. We just had an explosion in, I think it was in Tennessee or whatever, because, it looked like the guy doesn't like 5G or whatever. I'm starting to wonder what this Patriot Act is. We gave up all of our rights to privacy. They're monitoring everything you do. And how does something like this happen? How does 9/11 happen? How does, any of this stuff happen? You think that the money and the resources that they're spending on all of these programs, it boggles my mind. I can't believe that they're going after 250 gram drones or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And if you're talking about security, how about they just shore up their own state computer systems, the government computer systems? They've lost more data through hacking than we'll ever lose through someone flying a drone with a camera on it.
Well, there's that too. And this is another thing, data security and everything. It just goes on and on. How you're not going to be safe in this society anymore, especially if anything is connected to the internet.
Nobody would ever send off military systems to Sandy Wars and have the video feeds completely in the open and anyone can receive them with any gear. You'd never do that. Come on, that would be a silly thing to do.
I had to laugh in the comments, the feedback on that thing they published on the rule. One of the reasons they can't do remote ID as a requirement is because a lot of people doing sensitive surveying work and that are not allowed to have their systems connected to the internet while they're flying. It's a part of the thing for security purposes. So they obviously hadn't even researched how these things are being used and realized, oh my God, if you're working on a government contract, you can't have an internet connection while you're filming buildings with your drone. So they haven't even done the research. They don't know about the things they're regulating. They haven't got the fact they didn't know that the technology wasn't there to provide the network connectivity. How much money did they spend coming up with this convoluted plan without even doing a feasibility study first? And it's a waste of taxpayers' money. And it shows that there's no research, there's no risk assessment, there's nothing. They're plucking stuff out of their asses and saying, this is going to save the world. And it's all bullshit.
Well, don't worry, because I'm just going to say goodbye, but we'll keep going. My internet is due to go off in 52 seconds. We'll see if they're good to their word. So if we suddenly the guys can keep going. I just won't be there. So you guys can keep going. I'll say goodbye now.
So how do we shut the stream down?
I don't know. You just keep doing whatever you want to do. You
This
know,
could be a very long
Set it up
stream.
in 2 hours, Gary.
You'll be all right, won't you? I can trust you lot with it, can't it? It'll be all right. Nothing will go wrong with it. I mean,
Who's going to hit the stop button on YouTube?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Bruce is going to have an open channel to rent.
He's going to have to send one of us his login details, Bruce.
This video will be demonetized.
Oh my
again,
God.
but still. Well, that's a given. Right? Well, look, here we are. In 4 seconds, we should go. No, it's all a nonsense. It's all a nonsense, and it's such a very, very, very great shame, isn't it, that the world that we shouldn't be here now is 002. That model aircraft have got in the way of all of this, or got in harm's way, and I will be very intrigued to see what the compliance rate is like.
Well, those who do comply should be ashamed of themselves because they're stealing the hobby from future generations. And that's the fact. That's the fact. Their kids and grandkids, and they won't be able to enjoy the things we enjoyed because too many people are too selfish and too lazy to get off their bums and say, we're not having it.
Come on.
There's that when I was defending him, that he'd upset at least 50% of his user base. There's Bruce doing it again.
Well, that's the life of a YouTuber, isn't it? That's what he's got to do. You should see his hair and beauty channel. His hair and beauty channel is scandalous.
And smash that like button.
Like, subscribe. All those other things.
Where I'm getting the tips from.
So, yeah, there you go. Have there been any other stories this week? Or is that it? Is that the only story?
We've had the UK regulations. Some old guy caused trouble about that and put a video out and caused a lot of hassle around that. Because that's been published. And the UK's a mess. You know, look, our rules are fairly decent, but how you actually get to them is a complete bloody mess. And Bruce did what any normal person would do, is read the paperwork. And the bit of paperwork Bruce read didn't cover what he was doing. Therefore, as far as he was concerned, you're not allowed to do it. And me and Mark we had a phone call about this last night, didn't we, Mark? Just to get both of our heads around it.
Was it 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, it took us. And look, the UK rules are fairly straightforward. The problem is it's spread across 7 documents, of which I think 5 don't even reference each other. There's no comment to say go check here or go check there. It will get better, but it's a bloody mess.
Come on, you guys have too much on your plate with all the Brexit and everything.
Brexit's fine. We've sorted. Brexit's a non-thing. I don't know what you were concerned about, Louis. Brexit's resolved.
Bye-bye.
Our fantastic Prime Minister just made it go away. Just made it vanish as if it was never a problem.
No, but
well, what did you guys do before the EU? You know, can't you go back to that? You know?
No, the thing is, for instance, in Germany, they
Get on
are
the boats, sail out, do your thing.
It depends how far you go, Patrick, because it was all the countries in Europe, Europe used to trade, and then we came up with like a free trade agreement with like 5 or 6 countries, the original 6 for the EU project, and then eventually the Lisbon Treaty in 1980s created hell, is most of it.
Well, I could tell that they were pinching pennies in Brussels last time I was there. You know, they're saving everybody's money and good stewards of the taxpayers. Anyway.
It's like when they move Parliament from A to B. So they move Parliament, don't they? It costs like 300 million every time they move it every 6 months. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, exactly. And the other, well, I don't want to beat up on it. We had this free trade thing going here in Canada and the United States. We don't really make much in the United States anymore because everybody's looking for cheap.
But that's the bottom line worldwide, and that's why all of these things fall apart. Everything's made in China. you can't bring it back. You can't bring that stuff back because it's gone. Gone.
You're on to the next low-wage workforce that you can exploit. That's.
But I think you can only take that so far. With DJI being the whipping boys in this case, if you've seen their factories, if you've seen the things flying between each thing and this robot and that robot, it's not low-wage workers; it's no workers.
Which could be done in any country. It could be done in any country. This thing on it's all made in China. It's because they invest in themselves. Unlike the rest of the world, especially the UK, we are absolutely atrocious, right? Reinvestment, right, wins the day, okay? I worked for a big company at one point, and the lorry fleet was beginning to fall to bits. The trailers that take the goods to the customer, they will all fall into bits. Now, instead of buying at least 1 or 2 trailers a year, right, they didn't. They run the fleet basically as far as they could into the ground before they spend any money. And therefore, it costs more because of the delays that these trailers cause when you can't load them and get your stuff out the door. We don't invest in ourselves very well at all in the UK. It's our #1 crime. Okay, if you invest and you keep building on stuff and you take the money you make and you take 20% and you put it back into your company, that's
sorry, Mark. You're being reasonable.
Well,
you're being reasonable. Oh, come on.
It takes money to make money.
That is not allowed here.
It does take money to make money.
Disqualified.
The thing is,
and I think that the problem that we have in the United States, and I don't know, again, if it's in Europe, is people want to make 1,000% profit. Yeah, exactly.
Not only
and,
that,
it's hard to do unless someone's getting exploited. I do agree. DJI has done a great job with the robots, but all the parts, pieces, and components are still made, probably mostly by, hand or whatever. And that's okay too. I'm not beating up on the Chinese. I mean, they're good folks. Like I said, I'm not really big on communism, even though I'm doing the Karl Marx thing. I don't know. There is really no solution. You're going to have to get to like them, and I think that we're all becoming quite aware of that.
I mean, the thing is, you can tell China. The problem is,
Mark,
we said a minute ago, companies want to make 1,000% profit, right? And the problem is, the kicker is that unless you go to China, you can't make enough money. People are not happy with their American market. So the Americans are not happy with the American market. BMW is not happy with their German or European market. So they're going to get their vehicles made in China. The next thing they know, their IP has been copied. In the factory next door, there's an identity car coming out near us, damn it, which is the same as the BMW that's bought, was taken to. And this is one of these big problems. If you want to make stuff like Tesla,
sorry, Mark. I hope you don't have your savings on investment fund.
Well, that's another issue that we have here, though, too, is a lot of the VC funds have been infiltrated.
Yeah,
and the
company,
IP, gets transferred. I don't know. Tesla's a good example of that. I mean, he's building
every company, even Disney sucks up to China. So even Disney, right? And this sounds horrible, right? It sounds terrible. But Disney's films will be slightly different because they'll put something to do with China to make it sort of and there'll be a 5-minute difference in the film for the Chinese market because Disney wants that extra money. Everyone wants the dollar or pound or euro or whatever. Can't be happy.
That's where I'm going wrong.
Can half of you not hear Louis?
I can't hear him.
I couldn't hear Louis.
Yeah, I can hear him.
I can hear him because right, Louis, talk.
He's always complaining at me.
No. The thing is, what I was asking Mark if he has any money on investment funds that have stock options or stocks, because all the issue in both US and Europe is that the managers are measured on a quarterly basis. So you have to have results on a quarter. So there is no long plan strategy.
Does anyone know, Simon?
Okay, gentlemen, I'm just taking. Hang on, just a second. It's an important note here. I'm just taking bets now. I've got the clock running on the number of seconds before the smoke rises from Ian's bench. So how many minutes till there's a bang, flash, or smoke from that bench?
Not going to happen. I'm just unbending some pins that I've managed to bend.
Oh, another USB port.
No, it's not a USB port, this one. I fitted a module in a box for an aircraft, but for somehow it bent the pins as I was pushing it in the bloody thing.
You're not still charging your lipos by putting them in the microwave, are you?
No, I'm having to replace the GPS, which was originally an Eagle Tree GPS. So this is one of those small Maytech ones, but I need it to fit in the same size hole. So I've had to 3D print a bracket for it.
Oh, a hammer works wonder with that. You'll get it in there. Just one go.
Just hot glue. Geez, much quicker than 3D printing.
Yeah,
Get one of these.
Fabulous. Yes. They are very, very, very nice. He's not with us now. I swear there'll be smoke in a minute. I guarantee it.
And he's muted.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's be thankful for that, Louis.
What?
Look, I'm surprised I'm still here. 9 minutes. A funny old thing. My internet service provider is inaccurate with the timings that it gives us. A funny old thing. Last time we did this, it was 15 hours and no internet. So I'm looking forward to this.
So it's nearly 2021. How about some predictions for next year? What will happen next year? Because I'd like to know, what we think 2021 is going to bring, because I think we're going to see flying cars and Amazon drone deliveries, Domino's pizzas everywhere. I think it's going to be a real breakthrough year for drones.
Oh, yeah.
Year of the drone.
Who do we think will release the first new product? Who do we think?
DJI, 8th of January.
DJI on the 8th or 9th of January, 19th of January. Not DJI or TEL.
I thought they were going to wait until Trump was gone.
I can say nothing. But let's just watch January come and go, shall we?
Oh, they moved it later then, have they? Yeah, back to work.
Remote ID.
Back to work. 19th, I thought it was. That's what I'd heard anyway.
I'll go with remote ID will get put back. I don't think it'll come out in the UK because it's meant to be 2021. Is it September or something? It's meant to be 20. We're meant to get remote ID. So I think
they'll probably put, because all of these modules are going to be basically the same. If we look now, they're all following the same standard. They all have the same requirements across Europe, the US, and the UK. So one good thing will be for manufacturers, this is going to be one module. So, and no one's really doing it. Okay, there's an open source project on the French one, which could be tweaked. You've got Bruce's little thing, which irradiates people. You're going to see something come out with this very quickly. I know Philip was looking at it at QPilot. There will be a slew of these hit the market in a very short. You'll get these guys, Matex. These are the kind of guys who will be smashing this stuff out at very low cost.
Yeah.
The interesting thing be, how do you get your number in there? Can you just type your number into the thing? Because how easy is it going to be to spoof people? This is the thing. This remote ID thing creates new crimes. It's stealing people's remote ID transmitter or stealing drones when you want to commit a crime.
Say Bruce Simpson was here. So
he's already got it set up with a 20 kilowatt booster.
Okay. I'm going to predict what Bruce is going to do How long before Bruce buys one and then publishes his ID and tells everyone to clone it? Because we already know he's going to do that.
Well, we don't have remote ID here, but a lot of people have said they're going to buy remote ID things and they're going to stick them on the back of police cars and they're going to stick them on full-size aircraft and they're going to do all sorts of stuff. So basically, but what they forget is it's only broadcasting a couple hundred meters. No one's going to know. This is not like it's not actually the network thing. So. Yeah,
standard is 400 foot. 400 meters. They must prove in the standard it can do 400 meters, but that's not on the ground. That's up there, which is fairly easy, isn't it? Let's be honest. On the ground, that's got to be 22 feet.
I mean, it's going to be very easy to get a second email address from somewhere. I'm sure there's plenty of email providers out there. Please.
Simpson and Yahoo.net.
BruceSimpson.com.
Yeah, so then you'll be able to register, get your own little operator ID, get this device, and then put it on,
Bruce will guarantee buy one and put it up because he's not in the US, so he can sit there and give people total anonymity. It's going to happen. I think, Bruce, that it has to have a unique serial number, which I haven't seen because it's part of the ASTM standard, and they want 80 quid to see it. I think it is, or something like that.
That's another thing that chaps my hide. Here.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
This is America, okay? And I went up. This is why I stopped working with the ASTM, is because they were going to have standards that were going to be part of 107.
We were on the first call. I was even there.
Yeah, and so the deal is they're like, oh, if you want to see what's in the law, you're going to have to pay the $75 to read that. I'm like, and I blew a gasket. I remember I was at a parking lot, and I think it was in Virginia or South Dakota or something, rah, rah, yelling on the phone, "Are you out of your effing mind? This is the United States of America. I got to pay $75 to read what's going to be the law of the land. Are you insane?" So even this.
But remember also, Patrick, sorry to interrupt, but that was $75 for each thing, for the battery spec, for the wing spec, for the banana spec, for the fastness. It was $75 for each section.
Well, what I don't even, the deal is they're going to have to tweak this every year. Why are you going to keep paying for the standard? This standard thing is like software subscription nonsense, where like, you're going to have to, it's a ransomware thing, and now you got to pay me money or you can't fly. So even though I don't think this RID, the way it sits, is going to stand. I think you'll have lawyers are going to come out. And
who's going to protest? Who's going to protest?
Well, there are
state quads for a start,
ready to protest. But we've look what we had in the past with Taylor. This is another one. People talk about the RC guys. Oh, the RC guys. That Taylor. I think we were the only people that even publicly said we kind of knew the guy. I
didn't. You did. I didn't.
I did, because I'm like, well, this sounds good to me. Guys going out here, but it costs money to file paperwork and do the research and have people help you. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I try and do research for stories. It takes a long time. So I don't think it's going to stand as it is. I think it's flawed. And this 75 bones to stay in compliance is un-American. In my book, you got to pay to be crap.
Come
this
on,
country
Pat.
is I'm in my 50s, and this country has lost its way, man. That's all I can say. That people are pissed off because you want to tax.
Hang on, Patrick. Louis, you obviously can't hear Louis, but we can all hear Louis. Go ahead, Louis.
No. I was just saying to Patrick, he should try to buy. No, we should try to buy an ISO standards that will make you cry.
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny. Someone mentioned something earlier. I'm surprised that hasn't been in. And Bruce, I think it was Bruce, or someone put it in the comments, which was registration at the point of sale. It's something from a UK point of view. We've done it for donkey's years with TVs. You can't buy a telly in the UK. Obviously we're all licensed to you have to have a license to watch TV in the UK. But and that cost me 80 odd quid. Oh no, 100. What's it, Mark? 170 quid a year or something now, isn't it?
Who's died from TV?
TV, yeah, no, the UK, you pay you're forced to pay for the BBC. That's how it works. It's the public service broadcast you're forced to pay for. But TVs have registration at the point of sale. Now you can give them any name and address. Don't get me wrong, but you don't pay at the point of sale. You pay annually, but you have to give them your details, and it is something that probably should be reasonably put in place for ready-to-fly aircraft.
This should have been done on the registration task force, but you had the representatives from Best Buy and Walmart, and I'm sure DJI and other people. I don't know, because it wasn't memorialized. That's another thing with the FAA. They do all this private public rulemaking, and nothing is memorialized. So, the idea that, you go to Best Buy and you buy an aircraft, and that was another thing. Are they aircraft or toys? But if you're going to buy this aircraft and it's point of sale registration, and there's a little affidavit that says, hey, there are rules to flying in the NAS, and the people that do this are the FAA, and you can't fly over 400 feet, can't fly, whatever you want to have there. And the buyer signs off, dates it, pays their $5, they register their drone. Okay. It's very simple. Walmart, Best Buy didn't want to do it. FAA rolled over and said, okay, So it's not about safety. It's not about, as far as I'm concerned, doing something that's going to work. It's just like, look, I'm getting these calls from Congress and DHS, and they're busting my chops. I can't go on the junket over there to Amsterdam Drone Week and, then go to the Paris Air Show and whatever else and wine and dine on the FAA credit card. I asked for the expenses because I think the junkets are out of control. Those are simple solutions. Those would not nip the shenanigans in the bush or in the bud. My other thing is if the word, when they're imported into this country, if the classification is changed from toys to aircraft, then they would have to register them as aircraft and the shenanigans would go away. But everybody here knows what would happen. You get up to the counter, you're there at Best Buy, you're going to pay the $1,500 and the guy says, oh, you got to sign this affidavit here. But I can't do anything with this. Why would I spend $1,500 on this? This is crazy. I don't want this. And so they knew it would happen. People wouldn't want to fly these things. And I think that, the education thing, you have to be hiding in a cave in Afghanistan and not know that there are rules for drones. Okay. So that's not.
Oh, I don't know.
No, that's not even plausible. You can't own a cell phone, have internet connection, TV, read a newspaper. You can't do anything. There are rules for drones. And if the education process hasn't worked out for them now, I don't think that they're going to ever learn. But I think that education part of it has chilled sales, personally. I don't see drones like I used to.
In the UK,
no, it's because we're past peak drone. We're past peak consumer drone. And everyone's got them basically got one that wants one. The DJI stuff have hit a point where they're very good and good enough. So do I really need to buy the very latest one?
That's the problem. They all are. If you take the Parrot, the DJI, the Autel, the Skydio, it's not just DJI. There has been a massive plateau in the last 2 years it's the iPhone. If you think the iPhone hit its best at about the iPhone 4 or 5. From there, it's all been very incremental. Yes, there's some nice new cameras and stuff, but at the end of the day, it all does the same thing. And the drone industry had that 2 to 3 year period where it just went whoop, and cameras got better. And now suddenly we're at the stage where if a new Mavic dropped tomorrow, I wouldn't buy it, and most Mavic users wouldn't buy it because there's no point.
But I think registration and excess regulation has also had a very big chilling effect on people's acquisition of drones. I don't want to. Previously, you buy the toy, you go and fly it, no problem. Now, you've got to actually sign up with the government and register with the state because it's and little Johnny, we're not getting him a drone. He could get us into big trouble because they're going to be tracking it with remote ID. It's going to be a really big downturn in the hobby because so many people have left comments saying, I'm getting out of the hobby. It's just, I'm not interested anymore. It's just too much. And people are actually dropping out. Long-time people in the hobby are going to drop out. And new people coming in, there is so much fear of what could happen to you if you dare to cross that law and break a regulation. Look at the guy in Philadelphia, $182,000 in fines. Now, we know the guy's a dickhead, but the general public just read the headline, oh my God, I'm not buying little Tommy a drone. He could end up getting us, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. We can't afford to take that risk. Johnny, go and play with your PlayStation.
Or go buy a gun. We'll get him a gun because it's less regulated. No, I definitely believe that has. I mean, the thing is, if you were going to use the drone as, let's say, I'm an artist and I want to take photography, or I want to, and you have all these limitations, you're really limited on what you can do with this thing. So that's not. I mean, I might as well go buy a new DSLR and a selfie stick, and I'm having a good time. So I think there are those problems. Really, as this goes back to an education thing, I think that's something that's different. Even working for a university, it was like pulling teeth to get them to register the drones. Why do we have to do that? Why, okay, here, you sign up and you register them. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't own the drones. I don't want to register the drones. Well, who's going to register the drones? That went around for a year, and then I'm kind of like coloring outside of the lines. So I think you're going to have more and more people saying, hey, this just isn't worth it. It's not worth all of the extra effort, and I'm going to be on the hook and yada, yada, yada. So I do think that there are some issues with that. And I guess
it's like in the UK, you've got to be 18 to own, to be an operator. And so kids who don't have anyone they can call on to become the operator can't fly a drone because they can't put an operator ID on it. That's locking kids out of the hobby with all this ridiculous regulation.
Yeah, they can be supervised. So I think a 16-year-old
Yeah,
supervisor.
but if you don't have anybody, if you're a kid in an urban area and you can buy a little drone, 251 gram drone, and you want to fly it down the local park, you can't do that unless you get someone to basically sign up for you. And if you've got a solo mother as a parent and she's busy working or she's not interested, it just locks the very kids that could benefit most from getting involved in the hobby and learning stuff and getting the enthusiasm to make their lives better. They're the ones that are locked out.
Yeah, there is some of that in there somewhere, yeah. But, for the model flying, it was a bit of a surprise. But thankfully, they have said they're going to lower the age limits.
Yeah, so that's the thing, as I said in my video, now it's 12 and soon they're going to drop it. So why even make it 12? If like either it is safe for a 12-year-old to fly unsupervised or it's not. You can't say, well, in 6 months' time it's going to be safe, but it's not now. It's bullshit. That's why the regulations, as I say, there's no fact, there's no evidence, there's no substance behind these regulations. They've got regulators plucking stuff out of their backsides and saying, this is because it's safety, security, privacy, and it's all rubbish. In fact, the CAA shouldn't even be involved in privacy. They're an airspace regulator, they're not involved in privacy.
They can't get involved in privacy. It's actually, the CAA does admit for PFC holders, they can't get involved in privacy. All they can do is ask that you have a GDPR remit in your ops manual. Well,
Okay,
they can't do anything else on privacy as such.
Have you guys seen, we have Buzzy the drone over here. Have you seen Buzzy? I want to get back on the education thing. So Buzzy the drone, I even asked them, I said, how much did you spend on Buzzy the drone? Because Buzzy, who's the intended audience for Buzzy? The under 12 crowd, the under 10 crowd? I mean, I definitely thought they missed the mark. They came back and they said, well, we didn't spend any money on that because we just came up with it here in the office when we were in a meeting, blah, blah, blah. And I guess they don't understand how cost of sales works, but whatever. I mean, what a disaster. Same with that know before you fly. I mean, they give Kitty Hawk, Kitty Hawk is going to, remodel the know before you fly. And in exchange, they kept talking Kitty Hawk up on their social media channels, which I thought wasn't a good thing. I mean, that was like a quid pro quo thing. I don't believe that they gave the know before you fly education, let's say, scheme a good start, a follow through, or anything. I think that effort was just lackluster. I'm trying to keep it family oriented, but I think point of sale would have been much better than wasting your time on all of that stuff. And
I did see.
Well, that's how the thin end of the wedge works, isn't it? You suggest something very minor and say, this will solve the problem, and you make sure that it doesn't. So then you say, well, that didn't solve the problem. We're going to have to make it a bit wider, and that'll solve the problem. And then when that doesn't solve the problem, then it's spread them as far as you can, because this is the only thing that will save us. And it's all started with a tiny little crack.
Yeah, but the crack, everybody talks about that, no, we have to have a seat at the table, your seat at the table seems to be going, further and further away. I would almost rather not have a seat at the table, because I'm not going to sign on and give you consensus on some cockamamie scheme. Like, the registration task force. If I really believed, that by putting a registration number on your drone, you were people would be educated, people would be accountable, people would, step in line and like a light switch went off. I'd have been all for it. But that obviously it was anybody with half a brain would have looked at it and said, this is really flawed. And I told Nancy Egan that and Brendan Shulman that I would have said, until you have some data and science that makes sense to what we're doing here, I'm out. Have a nice.
But hang on, since they put tags on cars with registration numbers, there's been no death, there's been no speeding, hang on, no, you're right.
And people change license plates or obscure their license plates, or guys like me, I would buy a new car and I wouldn't put plates on it for 2, 3, 4 years.
Or you could be a manufacturer and do something with your emissions and just do something interesting.
Now, look, this is me back from the phone, and it's probably because the internet has gone in other ways. So I think it's probably as good a time as any, if you're hearing me now, to wrap this one up. And it's been a good one. So thank you very much. And dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, we're obviously all very pro this remote ID and welcome it with open arms, especially Louis.
Actually, I thought Louis was the biggest opponent. We're all in favour. He's been coming up with complaints.
Yeah.
The thing is,
Well, you're going to
it's
have to go
better to
back
have
there and look
clear
at that
rules.
segment,
That
you know, where it was no supervision.
Okay. I don't know how that
Let's go back
works.
together.
I'll definitely have to go back and look at that section. We'll also have to work out why you just really don't want to hear Louis.
I can't hear Louis at all. Sorry, Louis.
Can't you?
No problem, Patrick. No adult supervision required. That's the whole point of this. So let's try to make the best out of these crazy rules and work from within the rules to make them better. That's my point.
Careful.
Never comply, never surrender.
That's touching on sensible talk, Louis. Be very careful. Be red carded if you're not careful. Very careful. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much. Be very safe. We won't be enjoying New Year here in South Africa. We'll be under curfew with no alcohol allowed.
Okay.
And with that,
carry on.
He's gone into shock with no alcohol.
Why, did anyone find out why they're turning his internet connection off? That's something I didn't actually find out. What was the reason for the internet?
They want to increase the population in South Africa, so no distractions.
We could do so much damage right now. We really could.
Oh my God.
That's what he's telling him. You got to go back and watch that unsupervised portion. He'll be like, no internet thinking, what did they say? What did they say?
What did they say? It still says live at the top. So we're still on whatever happens.
Yeah, we're still live.
Now you've let the inmates left him in charge of the asylum. It's all over now.
Yeah, he's definitely fallen out now, isn't he?
Okay.
It's like I'm with Louis in the sense of like I try to be balanced on all these things. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. It is what it is. I'll comply because in many ways I have to. As a commercial operator, I have to. You can. Look, I don't have a choice. You know, if I was a hobby flyer, I could take a different stance. There's no question about that. But when you sign a piece of paperwork or make a document 80 pages big to give to them, you don't have a lot of choice. You have to follow the rules. I don't fundamentally disagree with remote ID. I just don't like it in its current form. But that current form is what it is, unfortunately, as well. And it seems to have been adopted around the world. I still think it's going to be interesting to see how it actually goes. It's still a long way off, isn't it? You know, it's 30 months.
What I was saying a while ago is that, for instance, Germany apparently delayed the introduction of the new EASA rules for a couple of months. So if Germany is delaying, most of the other countries are not also ready to start on January 1st. There's lots of confusion all over Europe with the introduction of the new EASA rules. We still have time to see. But, well, Patrick, sorry. You guys have to live with the FCC regulations and all the FAA regulations. So, tough luck. Better get to EASA rules. Perhaps your new head of state will adopt EASA rules.
Let's hope Patrick can read lips.
I can't see him. I can't hear him. I'm just
that's weird, isn't it? I don't know how that is. That's bizarre. I think, you know, from the UK point of view, as Mark said, I think we're due in September, isn't it, Mark? I think, and I honestly think that'll get delayed. Look, technically, any off-the-shelf models can comply with this with a firmware update. They're already doing it. As Patrick talked about earlier, Aeroscope is just remote ID behind closed doors. That's all it is. All they've got to do is change it to publicly send its address. So DJI could comply, RTF could comply quickly, but everyone else.
Will the American government, being anti-China as they are, deliberately choose a system which DJI can't natively support?
Well, not according to the paperwork. The paperwork is very basic for this. And they don't even require the aircraft for certification. They're saying all you've got to tell them is show them how you've proved it complies, is what they say.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that all plays out.
Because it's not just DJI that, you know, you think there will be any number of multiple companies across the whole world making modules. You'll have Proficiency, you'll have Hex, you'll have Metexis, you'll have CUAV. They're all going to get in on this.
And there'll be my version with the random number generator.
And Bruce's with the random.
Put me down for one of those.
Oh,
Bruce will have a button on the side and it'll change the ID. Yeah, or every 30 seconds it will just roll through a separate set of numbers.
what you're going to have to do is go onto the internet, go to Facebook in the UK, go into the old Mavic groups or any of the drone groups, scroll through, look for those people that take photos of their drone with the operator ID on it or anything else.
Yeah.
Grab their operator ID. There you go. And
But remember, it still will have a unique serial number, which you'll be
Just
required.
wander around the local AMA field and pluck the numbers of the people you don't like, and away you go.
Numbers are the ones you don't like, and yeah, it's.
There's a reason why I don't have mine. You know, buy that broken drone off eBay that's been smashed up. Just make sure the flight controller, wipe its last flight or whatever. Stick that operator ID on it anyway, and just chuck it over an airfield fence. Jobs are good, and off you go.
Well, there are also issues. People talk about, when they send their equipment in to be fixed to DJI and they don't get the same equipment back. Is that going to create problems? I don't know.
Yeah, that will. That actually genuinely will, because in theory, you in the US, it won't in the UK because we won't be required to register, but in the US, you will be required to.
He's back.
You'll be required to register it on your certificate, Patrick, for your aircraft.
He's fired up the steam boiler.
Oh, come on. Let's leave the fine oath to terminate the show.
You haven't cut us off yet, Gary.
So I've seen.
That's a tenuous connection. Better push the button while you can, mate.
Well, yeah, I don't quite know how the internet's working now. But it is, again, all of a
Magic.
Why are they turning it off?
To upgrade some equipment down in Durban, apparently. But every time they do that, then it goes off for hours and hours, and then, as just happened, then the cell phone towers break as well. So then your mobile internet goes, and it's just.
There must you are Huawei stuff.
That the contracts have just been awarded for all of that to go in, so that is happening. That is happening right now. It's all gone a bit chaotic. Our power utility tends to take the gap and gives us mandated power cuts as well. So those started at 10 o'clock tonight. So we've got mandatory power cuts, 4 hours at a time, and no internet. And then, as I've said in the comments, no booze for New Year. Not that it really matters, but a curfew anyway. You've got to be in by 9 o'clock in the evening now, every night. So there's a curfew 9 till 6 now. And it's a criminal offence if you don't wear a mask. Now, and they are beginning to round people up for that. So that's fun.
Yeah. We know the COVID happen at night.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, it's our big Christmas holidays here in the Southern Hemisphere. Bruce knows this because he's enjoying sweltering summery weather as well. And
no snow.
People have gone nuts, and so it's gotten hold. But that said, we peaked at 14,000 cases in a day. It's going down already, but yeah, they've brought in these. Well, I guess because New Year was bound to be a big issue, wasn't it? Bound to be.
Well, the COVID cases are going down because your 5G's failed.
No, it's because they're just fitting it tonight and at the moment.
Well, the UK hit 57 today, and the ambulance lighted in London now. It just to move people about.
Yeah, it's not cool, is it? It's not cool. It's not cool. Anyway, look, let's actually finish this time. Let's see if we can do this from this. So, dear viewers, thank you very much for putting up with this and putting up with me and putting up with all of us. Have a lovely, safe New Year wherever you are in the world. Wear a mask, wash your hands, stay away from other people, and we'll see you all next year. Cheers for now, everyone. Bye bye.